World leaders at the UN laughed at Donald Trump. This is something that made news the other day. I want to show you if you haven't seen it yet.
Today I stand before the United Nations General Assembly to share the extraordinary progress we've made. In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
So at first, I have to be honest with you guys, at first I didn't hear what everybody kind of said was happening, which is, oh, they start laughing at him, and then, he responds. But if you watch it over and over, you can see that, yes, he is responding to laughter in the room. I don't think the laughter is as pronounced as some want it to be, but there definitely is some laughter in the room, and then he hears it. And I guess he's sensitive to it because he definitely hears it, and he pauses, and he's like, wow, I didn't expect that's what your reaction was going to be. And then everybody, laughs even more. Now, to be fair to him, he did handle it in a way that was kind of funny. So at the time, it was lighthearted. I think inside, he was seething as a result of that. But the main point to take away from this is, guys, this is what happens when he's outside of his rally bubble. So you have to understand, Donald Trump, I call him and many others call him the Fox News president, and we do that because it's accurate to call him the Fox News president. He spends a tremendous amount of time every single day watching Fox News, so he basically cocoons himself, he gets himself a little safe space, and all he hears all day long is conservative propaganda, and they talk about how awesome he is and how great he is and how he's making America great again and how the Democrats are evil and wrong and terrible and dumb. And then, every now and then he goes to these rallies. Now, I actually think politically that's a smart move to do those rallies, and I think that Democrats should pick up on that the next time there's a Democratic president. But he goes and he does these rallies, and I think that he genuinely gets the misimpression that, oh no, I am super duper duper popular. I'm beloved. And he has his, talking points he goes through, lowest unemployment, lowest African-American unemployment. Now, obviously, that's not the whole picture because you can have low unemployment but have low-wage jobs that are being created, and that's exactly what's happening. So the picture is not nearly as rosy as he's making it out to be, and of course, we're in a bubble and all these other things. So point is, this is what happens when he goes outside of his rally bubble and outside of his safe space, is he gets slapped in the face with the reality of the situation, which is that especially outside of the U.S. Now, he's not that popular in the U.S. if you look at his approval rating, but especially if you go, you fill a room full of other world leaders, you are kind of a joke. You really are, Don. And when you say stuff like that, you only prove the point further. You would think that a reasonable person, an intelligent person, would try to counteract the perception of himself around the world, and he would try to act more like a statesman, but he actually feeds into the exact stereotype that everybody in the room has about him, which is probably one of the reasons why they start laughing. Oh, really? You fucking achieved more than almost any other presidency at this point? Get the fuck out of here! Even according to his own criteria that he laid out at the beginning when he was campaigning, it's not the case that he's achieved more than any other presidency. I mean, he ran on, I'm against outsourcing, I'm going to keep your jobs here. Guess what? We've outsourced 93,000 jobs under Trump, which is even more than Obama's last year in office. So he's worse than the guy who he was ripping for outsourcing the jobs. And the list goes on and on. He said, we're going to get out of Afghanistan. We're going to get out of Iraq. We're going to stop rebuilding overseas, start rebuilding at home. We haven't gotten out of the countries that we're in, and we haven't started rebuilding at home. We haven't even done an infrastructure deal, which you actually could do because you'd get bipartisan votes on that. You get crossover votes from Democrats on that. But, of course, the only proposal he did was an insane privatization scheme / scam, and he's not getting any support. So this is what happens, dude. This is what happens when you step out of your safe space. You get slapped in the face with the reality of the situation, and you're kind of a joke, dude. You're kind of a joke. And there's a lot that feeds into that, man. I mean, two, I think, of the most important things that are overlooked in U.S. media, he pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement and he pulled out of the Iran deal. You have to understand how that's perceived. Like, you are just an extremist idiot goofball for doing those things. Pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, it's like the bare minimum we could do to try to combat climate change. The bare minimum. And he's like, oh, it's too hard on the United States, we're going to pull out. Because the U.S. and we have to do a lot more than Ecuador has to do in the deal. So it's unfair to us. Yeah, because we do way more emissions than Ecuador that already does. So, of course, by definition, we have to do more to meet our goals because we emit so much more. And the Iran deal, you finally get a deal where you have Iran cooperating with the international community. They get regulated by the IAEA to make sure they don't develop nukes. And you rip up the deal and you pretend like this is going to make us safer. No, you just made it so that now it's much more likely they will get nukes. So he's just a goofball. He's a clown. And he stepped out of his little Fox News / right-wing rally safe space. And this is what happens, dude. You are a joke. So the thing that Trump fears the most is what's happening. He's getting slapped in the face with the reality that the world views him as the joke that he is. And the final point is, he will attempt to use this to his advantage. Well, he went on to say later on, like, oh no, they were laughing with me, not at me. What? So that was a joke when you said that line? So you knew it was a joke that you're not one of the best administrations at this point? That's not true, man. You know you said it seriously. But my guess is he will eventually try to flip this back. And how do you flip it back? You argue like, oh no, see, I told you. I told you that I am going after the elites. And see, the proof of it is the room full of elites hates me. And they were laughing at me. You can flip it like that. But of course, the reality is, and I've pointed this out before, the ultimate irony of Donald Trump is that, you know who he wants to be? He wants to be Hillary Clinton. Because Hillary Clinton is beloved by the powers that be, by the establishment, by the status quo, by the elites. And Donald Trump wants nothing more than that pat on the head from the elites. He loves the cocktail circuit. He loves the moneyed interests. So, ironically, he wants to be the person that he beat in the election. And his reaction here is further evidence of that. Because we all know damn well, even though most of you listening, and I know I do, we despise Hillary Clinton because she's a corporatist, there's no way the room would have been laughing at Hillary Clinton. And he wants nothing more than the approval of the bigwigs and the fat cats around the world. So basically, Donald Trump is a fraud because he's the opposite of what he pretended to be on the campaign trail. And this is just a good example of it right here, that no matter how much he strives for and tries to get that adoration of the moneyed interests and the world leaders, he's never going to get it. And it's not one of those instances where, like, Bernie Sanders would be despised by moneyed interests and world leaders, but Bernie Sanders actually would be like, yeah, I welcome it, bitch. Just like FDR said about Wall Street, I welcome their hatred. That's exactly what Bernie would do about moneyed interests or world leaders who are against him. Trump, on the other hand, deep down, he's like, oh, why don't you like me? Why don't you like me like the people at my rallies? God damn it, please love me.